The rain had not yet begun, but the sky over Salem was bruised and restless, the air so still that the leaves clung to the trees as if afraid to fall. The marsh beyond Hawthorne Hill steamed in the cold, its fog creeping down into the cobblestone streets like fingers seeking warmth. In the center of that gray quiet stood the old Blackwood Estate, a house no one touched, a house where the mailman never lingered, where even the stray dogs turned their heads and crossed the road. For 70 years it had kept its doors closed, but its windows never stopped watching. Jonathan Creed felt those windows long before he saw them. The historian's boots sank in the wet ground, his lantern swinging low, casting pale arcs across the iron gate. The letter in his coat pocket weighed more than it should have. Yellowed paper, cracked wax, the Blackwood crest stamped in black. A crow with its wings torn open. It had said only, "The names are fading. The hill remembers. If this is found, do not open the cellar." He pushed the gate. It gave without sound. Inside the house, the air changed. The damp smell of October gave way to something stale, dry, and faintly metallic. Dust layered the floorboards, yet a single trail of bare, small footprints ran up the main hall and disappeared into the shadows above the stairs. A clock ticked somewhere far away. It was not the sound that unnerved him. It was the rhythm. Slow, patient, too steady for a place this dead. The portraits were the first to greet him. They lined the hall, each blurred, each face wiped of its eyes, as if time had gnawed them away. All except one, a woman in a black gown, her hair long and pinned with a silver clasp, her mouth thin as thread. The plaque read, "Rebecca Blackwood, 1831. Her shadow was missing. He stepped closer, and the air behind the portrait fluttered. A breath, warm and damp, touched his ear. "You've come to write it down," the whisper said. The door at the end of the hall opened by itself. The cellar stairs were stone, spiraling into the earth. No blueprints had marked them, but here they were, slick and narrow, smelling of wet iron. His lantern threw light against the walls, brick at first, then root, then something that yielded under the flame as though it lived. At the bottom, a chamber of mirrors, each pane fogged, each holding the shape of a figure just far enough away to be almost seen. A boy with empty eyes, a sailor with his neck broken, a woman clutching a candle whose flame bent sideways though there was no wind. In the center lay a book. It did not gather dust. It pulsed. Creed bent and touched the cover. The mirrors cleared. Every figure turned its face toward him. "Stay." The word came from all mouths at once. His own reflection raised its hand. The door closed. The corridor beyond the chamber was not built of stone. It breathed, it bent. Lanterns burned blue in niches, 12 of them, each with something beneath. A child's rattle, a lock of hair, a key heavy with rust. As he passed, the object stirred as if waking from sleep. A woman's laughter trailed the air, then stopped sharp, as though a knife had cut the sound. Behind him, the book whispered, "One name each century, one debt, one door." The first door opened. Fog rolled across the floor. The second, bare footsteps followed him though he walked alone. The third, his lantern flickered and went out. And in the dark, a figure moved. A man in a mariner's coat, jaw bent too far, eyes like drowned glass. "You read their names," it said. "You woke the hill." Creed pressed himself against the wall. The mariner did not come closer. It pointed to the book. Write, or follow. He ran. Rooms folded over each other. A nursery with cradles full of dust. A parlor where the fire burned cold. A kitchen where the knives still dripped as if from a meal unfinished. Everywhere the portraits watched, their eyes reforming one by one. Then he found her again. Rebecca. Alive. Waiting. "You're late," she said, standing in the tower room, rain clawing at the glass behind her. Her face had not changed since the portrait. 60 years and she had not aged a day. Creed raised the book. "It wants your name." She smiled. Her teeth were wrong. "It wants a name, that is all." The house groaned beneath them, walls flexing like lungs. Outside, the fog pressed closer, and the town below vanished. He read her diary by the dying light. It told the truth. In 1792, the Blackwoods made a pact. One life each century to keep the hill from sinking, to keep their blood from the noose. 11 were taken in the first debt. Villagers, nameless now, wiped from the church books. The 12th was meant to be hers. She cheated. She left the book open for another hand to write. Now it was his. The ghosts gathered. They filled the hall, silent, waiting. The mariner pointed. "She walks because you will not write." Rebecca's shadow bent at her feet, growing long, branching like roots. Creed tore the page. The house screamed, mirrors cracked, the book bled ink. The walls heaved like a ship in a storm. Rebecca clawed at her throat as letters burned across her skin. REBECCABLACKWOOD. The windows shattered. Fog poured out of her mouth, and the hill began to sink. When the sun rose, Hawthorne Hill was empty. The gate stood alone in a field of churned earth. The Blackwood Estate was gone, as if it had never been. Jonathan Creed walked down the slope, his hair white, his coat heavy with damp, the book gone from his hands. Only a single page remained, pressed against his palm. On it, one line, "Next name due, 1994. The road was built. The town moved on. They paved the marsh, planted schools, built shops. But the fog still comes. Once in 100 years, the windows still open. And when they do, the hill remembers the ones who came with pens in their pockets, because the house never truly fell. It waits, behind the glass, for the next name. The fog returned before dawn, rolling in from the marsh like a living tide. The townsfolk who still remembered whispered of the gate, how it had rusted shut, how nothing grew where the house once stood. But that night, the iron creaked. A light appeared on the hill. Not a flame, not a lamp. A glow, pale and cold as the moon. Jonathan Creed did not sleep that night. He sat in a boarding house on the edge of Salem, staring at the single page he had carried from the ruins. It had dried now, the ink sunken into the paper, but the line still pulsed faintly as if written in living blood. Next name due, 1994. He had broken the chain, or so he thought. He had watched Rebecca Blackwood scream as her name burned into the book. He had seen the house sink, but the words had not said the hill was free. They had said the hill would sleep, and sleep was never permanent. For years, Creed tried to bury the page. He locked it in a trunk, dropped it in the harbor, buried it beneath the stones of an abandoned chapel. Each time it returned, sometimes in his desk drawer. Once, folded neatly into the sleeve of a coat he had never worn. The ink darkened as the years passed. He aged faster, hair white at 40, hands shaking at 50, heart faltering at 60. By 1920, he no longer wrote. He simply waited. And then, on a rain-slick night in March 1994, a young man named Daniel Mercer, a real estate surveyor, was sent by the city to clear records for a new development. Hawthorne Plaza, they were calling it. A mall, parking lots, a playground where the marsh once bled. The gate was still there. Daniel laughed at it. Rust, nothing more. He took his measurements, his photographs. He didn't hear the clock at first, though the others did. The work crew stopped, heads turning toward the sound. It was ticking. From nowhere, from under the ground. That night, Daniel dreamed of a woman in a black gown, her eyes dark as oil, her mouth whispering a name he could not remember upon waking. His survey papers were blank the next morning, the ink run into black stains. He went back to the site. The gate was open. Inside, the ground had shifted. What was once flat was now a slope. He walked it without meaning to. boots sinking into the soft mud where no rain had fallen. At the bottom, the air turned cold and the mist thickened. When he turned, the road was gone. Only the house stood there, rebuilt, every window lit. Daniel entered. The portraits were waiting. The woman's eyes were clear again, and on the table in the hall lay a book, its cover slick, its pages breathing. On the first page, a line already written, Jonathan Creed, 1894. Beneath it, a blank space, still warm. The mirrors in the walls began to stir. Shapes pressed against them, thin hands, hollow eyes, mouths opening without sound. The house whispered through the floorboards, the same word it had whispered 100 years before. Stay. Daniel dropped his lantern. Its light died. The clock struck once. He ran. Through halls that stretched into alleys, staircases that led into basements, doors that opened into rooms full of fog. The objects were still there. The rattle, the locket, the key. Each one turned to watch him as he passed. At the end of the corridor, a shadow waited. Tall, bent, familiar. It raised its head. Jonathan Creed, alive, or what was left of him. You came to finish what I could not, the old man croaked. His eyes were pale as milk, his skin paper thin, stitched with black lines. Do not write the name. Burn the book. Burn it before she wakes. The mirrors shattered. Rebecca Blackwood stepped through. Her face had not changed. The debt is due, she whispered, her voice crawling into the cracks of the walls. He bought a century with his silence. Now it is yours. Daniel turned to flee, but the door behind him was gone. Only a wall of mist. Only the ticking of the clock. And the book, lying open on the floor, pen waiting, ink already wet. Somewhere above, the town slept. Somewhere below, the hill began to breathe again. And in the dark, one word was written on every mirror, every wall, every window pane. Choose, because the hill does not die. It waits, and the name was his to give. The mist crawled higher, swallowing the bare branches, wrapping the old iron gate in pale threads until even the road behind Daniel vanished. The house exhaled again, a long, low breath that smelled of ash and seawater. His hands trembled over the open book. The ink glistened as though it had only just been spilled. The pen rolled toward his palm, stopping at his fingers like a thing that knew him. Write and walk away, the house whispered. Refuse and remain. He took a step back, the wooden floor groaning as if beneath 100 unseen feet. In the mirrors lining the walls, faces pressed closer. Dozens now, men and women with ropes burned into their necks, children holding dolls with eyes scratched out, sailors dripping black water. They were not just watching, they were waiting. "Who are you?" Daniel shouted. A voice rose from behind the staircase, rough, frayed, old. Jonathan Creed stepped forward, his frame bent, but his presence cold as winter. I warned them. I burned the page. I tore the name. But the hill does not forget. Daniel stared. You should be dead. I was. Creed's mouth twitched into something like a grin. The house doesn't let go of what it owns. Rebecca Blackwood appeared between them, her gown blacker than the shadows, her eyes reflecting the lantern's blue fire. She did not walk. She slid, her feet never touching the ground. The names keep the hill upright, she said. You build your roads, your schools, your malls. But this place was never yours. It was ours before the church, before the crown, before the first stone in Salem Harbor. She raised her hand. The mirrors cleared. And there, among the 11 names burned a century ago, Daniel saw something terrible. His own reflection etched into the 12th glass, though no one had written him yet. There is a way out, Creed rasped. Burn the book. End the pact. Rebecca's head tilted, her neck creaking. Burn it, and they stay. They do not move on. They rot here forever, their screams stitched into your sleep. Daniel looked at the book. Its pages turned by themselves, Faster, faster, until a fresh sheet glowed. His name began to scratch itself into the fibers. D-A-N-I. He dropped the pen. The house roared. The ceiling split. Roots burst from the beams, twisting like ropes. They lashed across the hall, dragging the lanterns from the walls, spilling cold light over the portraits. One by one, the eyes returned to the frames. They followed him as he ran. The doors led nowhere. Stairs folded upward, turning into ramps slick with moss. The cellar swallowed itself, opening a black throat that stank of iron. And through it all, the clock ticked. Not loud, but steady, counting. Daniel stumbled into the drawing room. The fireplace flared, though no wood lay within. A letter floated up from the ashes, creased, yellowed, cracked wax seal broken. The same letter Jonathan Creed had found in 1894. The names are fading. The doors remember. Do not open the cellar. He looked up. The cellar door was ajar. Behind it, the 12 blue lanterns burned. If you run, you return, Creed whispered behind him. If you write, you carry it. And if I burn it? Creed's face cracked like dry bark. Then the hill sleeps empty. For a while, Daniel stepped into the cellar. The mirrors were whole again. The book back on its pedestal, breathing slow, expectant. He struck a match. Its flame wavered blue. The house shrieked. Rebecca appeared in every mirror at once. Fool! Her voices layered over each other. 12, 100, 1,000. If you burn it, you join them. You do not leave. You become the dead itself. The flame touched the cover. The book screamed. The mirrors burst one by one, spilling their ghosts into the hall. They rushed past him. Sailors, mothers, judges, children, streaming upward, dissolving into the beams. Rebecca tore herself into smoke, her body unraveling, her claws scraping the stone. And the hill groaned. The ground split outside. Fog poured down the roads. Every window in Salem rattled as if under a storm that never reached the sky. When Daniel awoke, he was on the threshold of the gate. Dawn lay over the marsh like wet silk. The house was gone. In his hand, a page, warm, wet, smelling of ash. On it, a single line. Debt paid. Collector assigned. Daniel Mercer. From that day, no one saw him in Salem again. But travelers whispered of a man in dark clothes, hair streaked white, standing on cold nights by forgotten cemeteries, by closed doors, by sealed cellars. Sometimes he carries a book, sometimes a lantern. Always his shadow points the wrong way. And the hill? It waits still, because a name is only a pause. A debt is forever. The marshland never truly healed. Where the Hawthorne house once stood, developers laid concrete, raised glass towers, painted cheerful signs over buried foundations. They called it Hawthorne Plaza, a shopping center with polished floors and clean light. Families came and went. Teenagers loitered under the flicker of the neon clock sign. But sometimes, just before the last store closed, the clock hand spun backward. And sometimes, in the reflection of the glass, a figure watched. It was winter 2015 when Laura Kensington, a historian from Boston, arrived with a team to document the area's older architecture. The city wanted a heritage trail, a quaint little walking map for tourists. Laura wasn't superstitious. She believed in archives, not omens. But the files she uncovered didn't match the buildings. Too many maps, too many erased lots. One name came up again and again, in lawsuits, in sudden closures, in fire reports that left no bodies behind. Daniel Mercer, a surveyor who had vanished in 1994. Laura followed the trail to the plaza. It was a quiet night. Snow whispered against the parking lot. The clock above the entrance read 3:17, though her watch said 11:52. She entered anyway. The mall was empty. Stores dark, gates pulled down, mannequins wrapped in frost. But the floor was wet, slick like something had melted there. and halfway down the central corridor, someone had written on the tile, letters black and wet like oil, "Do not write the name." She took a picture. The message was gone when the flash cleared. In the food court, a man sat alone beneath the clock. His coat was old, too heavy for the mild snow. His hair streaked white, though his face was not yet old. "You're late," he said. "Do I know you?" Laura asked. "You will. Everyone does." The man lifted his hand, and in it was a folded page, edges burned, words scrawled in a hand that shook but did not falter. "Collector assigned. Daniel Mercer." The lights flickered. The mall shifted. Stores became hallways. Hallways became stairs. The air turned damp, briny. The scent of the marsh returned. Laura turned to run, but the glass walls now reflected a house, old and waiting, its windows glowing faintly with that same cold blue light. "You found me," Mercer said, voice hollow as a cellar. "Now it will find you." From the ceiling, the first drop of black water fell. The clock hands began to spin. The mannequins turned their heads, and in every darkened storefront, a mirror breathed. "It doesn't want the land," Mercer whispered, his breath a fog even in the warm air. "It wants the names. Always the names." Laura reached for her phone. Its screen was blank. No time, no date. Only a single line, glowing faint. "Kensington, due." The ground cracked. The mall's floor gave way, revealing old brick, older stone, the buried bones of the house beneath. Rebecca Blackwood's voice came through the cracks, cold and slow. "Another century. Another keeper." Mercer dropped the page at her feet. "Burn it, and you take my place. Keep it, and you take theirs." Laura stared at the mirrors. She saw children pressed against the glass, men in tattered coats, women clutching lockets, Jonathan Creed's face in the farthest pane, lips moving though no sound came. She picked up the page and felt the ink still warm. The lights died. Only the clock remained, its hands ticking down from 3:17 to 3:16, 3:15. Every step she took echoed in more than one direction. Her shadow stretched wrong. "You don't escape," Mercer said, stepping back into the dark. "You only delay." The hill remembers. The mall is just a mask. And somewhere under the floorboards, the book turns another page, waiting for another name, another century, another debt to claim. Because the house was never demolished, it was buried alive. And now, it breathes. Snow kept falling over Salem, burying the streets in a silence that felt older than the town itself. Laura Kensington did not leave Hawthorne Plaza that night, not really. The cameras showed her walking out at 4:12 a.m., hands empty, coat zipped, but the guards swore the doors never opened. 2 weeks later, her apartment in Boston was found locked from the inside. The mirrors were turned to face the walls. On her desk lay a single envelope, wax seal cracked. "Collector assigned, LK." No trace of her since, but the plaza changed after that. Clocks stopped working there. Phones died in pockets. Customers began complaining of shadows that didn't match their movements, of whispers in the stairwells between midnight and dawn. A boy disappeared in 2017. His friends said he went to the bathroom. Security footage showed him walking toward the far wing, where the floor plan had no far wing. When they checked, the corridor was bricked shut. By 2020, Hawthorne Plaza was abandoned again. Developers fenced it off. Local papers called it cursed. And in a series of late-night drone videos posted by thrill seekers, you could see something strange. Every window glowing faint blue, and a tall figure standing by the old iron gate. Sometimes 2 figures, sometimes 3. In December 2021, a team of urban explorers, 3 men, 1 woman, went inside. They live-streamed the whole thing, laughing, joking, daring each other to open the doors in the sub-basement. The feed cut at 3:17 a.m. When police entered, the building was empty. Only their cameras were found, all pointed at a single spot. The old cellar, door ajar, cold air spilling from a stairway that should not exist. And in the last recorded frame, the faint outline of a woman in black. The town voted to demolish the plaza in 2022. Machines came, walls fell, steel screamed, but the ground beneath would not give. Bulldozers sank axle-deep in mud that hadn't been wet in months. Concrete cracked in clean, perfect circles, 12 of them, around the old foundation. The workers left. The fences rusted. The marsh returned. Now, in 2025, locals speak of the hill again. Children dare each other to run to the gate and touch it at midnight. Hunters say they see lights moving across the fog, lanterns with no bearers. A fisherman swears he saw his dead brother standing in the mist, a page in his hand, smiling. And every century, the clock strikes 3:17. Every century, the debt calls a name. Jonathan Creed tried to stop it. Daniel Mercer tried to delay it. Laura Kensington tried to warn them. But the hill was here before the town, before the laws, before the map, and it will remain after. Some say the house never wanted blood. It wanted memory. Names are memory, and when enough are written, when the list is long enough, the mirrors will open not to a cellar but to something else. Something beneath the marsh, breathing, old as the first stones of Salem Harbor. No one has seen it yet, but they have heard it. Ticking, always ticking, waiting for the next name to turn cold. The fog lifted one final time, revealing the broken plaza and the old iron gate. Daniel Mercer stood where the road once was, the book heavy in his hands. The pages no longer turned, they were sealed shut with ash. Rebecca Blackwood's shadow lingered in the windows, silent and unmoving. Laura Kensington's voice whispered from the wind, warning him to choose. He tore the final page free and set it alight with a match. The hill shuddered, releasing a breath older than the town. Mirrors shattered across Salem, spilling black smoke that faded into nothing. The clock at the plaza stopped at 3:17 and never moved again. Names faded from the glass, leaving only pale streaks of frost. The marsh closed, swallowing the cellar for the last time. No more letters arrived, no more envelopes sealed with wax. The debt, for a moment, felt broken. Mercer vanished with the dawn, leaving only footprints in the snow. The plaza was leveled, and grass grew where concrete once lay. Children played there again, though they said the air was always cold. Some nights, a lantern flickered on the hill, then disappeared. Locals whispered that the house would return when the names were forgotten. The hill was quiet, but it was not gone. It was only sleeping.